Hello everyone and welcome to this next video on the Summer 2022 paper for Eduqas Paper 1. This is the Peter Kemp paper and we're going to be going through the reading section, and I will flash up the questions for the narrative as well in case you want to practice that towards the end. Okay, so the first thing that we do, as always, if we look at question 1, it tells us read lines 1 to 7, so you should be very used to this now. You need to take your pen and rule off underline 7, section that off for question 1. Okay, so the question says, list 5 things you learn about Rachel in these lines. If you're already confident with this question and you just want to check the answers afterwards, pause the video, try doing that now. Okay, if you're not and you want a bit of help, then carry on watching and I'll show you what to do. So 5 things means actually we want to put 6, as you should hopefully know, because we put a spare there in case you get one wrong. Everything must relate to Rachel. Okay, any information which is not about Rachel will not be awarded. Okay, so let's read it together and go through it. Rachel was doing a research project at Durham University when she met Peter Kemp. Okay, just pause the video now and highlight the bit in that first sentence because there is an answer there that you think is correct. Okay, hopefully you've put down that she's doing a research project at Durham University. Okay. Now, you could have also said that she met Peter Kemp at Durham as well. So there's 2 separate ones you could have put in that first part there. They're quite similar though, so you might want to put some different ones down. Second line also has some answers in. Okay, she had taken her degree in biology in Cambridge, almost as far away from her mother as she could manage, but then she moved back north. Okay, there's about 3 different answers in that sentence alone. Again, so pause the video and see if you can figure them out. Okay. I'm assuming that you will have done that by now. Now, I'm not going to give you the answers just yet. I'm just going to give you an example of the kind of thing that you write. Remember, we don't just copy the quote entirely. If you put Rachel was doing a research project at Durham University and you copy all of that first line there without changing at least one word, you may not get the mark. Okay, so just to be safe, make sure you alter. So she, changing Rachel to she, you can put we learn at the front as well, and just make sure you've made it part of your own phrase, your own sentence. Okay, so we learned Rachel did a research project. So I've changed doing to did at Durham University. Okay, that 100% will get you a mark, and you don't need to do anything else, no quote or anything like that. So now you definitely want to pause the video and try and find 6 of those, please. Okay, if you've unpaused, then you'll be wanting the answers, and they are here. Okay, so she's doing research at Durham, which is the one I showed. She met Peter Kemp while researching at Durham. That was the second one from the first line. She had a degree in biology from Cambridge. She does not seem keen to be near her mother. She had moved back north or closer to be closer to her mother. She is passionate about upland birds. She had started by studying black grouse. She transferred her interest to curlews and wagtails, which are other types of birds. She was trying to devise a system for counting birds, and she uses cottage in Northumberland as a base for her studies and her research. Okay, so up to 5 marks for the 5-mark question there. But as I said, make sure that you've at least kind of modified the quote slightly, just so that you're not directly copying. Directly copying will often not get a mark. You need to make sure that you've just put those little phrases like that at the beginning to show that you understand that you've got to use that information in a short sentence. Okay? Right, second question. If we just scroll down the top there. It says, read lines 8 to 18. Okay, so we do the same thing again as normal. We take our pen and we use the correct pen. There we go. And we rule off here, and this is question 2. Okay, question 2 says, what impressions does the writer create of the White Hart in these lines? Okay, so the White Hart is this, this pub that they're that she's meeting him here at, and we need to find some information about that. So it's not a character-based question. This one it's quite different actually, but we're still looking for information. Okay, so this pub, this hotel, we're looking for information about it. So anything which you think relates to this building, or its character, or what kind of like people are going there, etc., then that's going to be relevant. Okay, so we're going to start off. We're going to look at line 8 and see what we come up with. All right. So it says, it was a windy day in April. Doesn't tell us anything about the White Hart. And Rachel had come into the town of Kimmerston to have lunch at the White Hart. Okay, so it's mentioned now, but we don't know anything about it. At the request of Bob Hewlett, who worked as a conservation officer for English Nature, a government agency. Okay, still don't know anything about the White Hart. The White Hart was a solid stone-built hotel on Kimmerston's main street. Okay, so highlight the bit that you think should be the correct answer. And of course, it's solid stone-built hotel. Okay. Now, because this is question 2, that means we have to use comment and evidence, as you know. Now, if I just bring up my model here and itch this up there we go. Got a bit of space now. Let's scroll down. So, comment and evidence is either putting it into your own words, saying thoughts and feelings of what's happening. Okay, so if a building is solid, it's stone built, okay, I think probably the best one to use here is going to be your own words. All right, so we're going to start off with something like, firstly, for this model answer, if a hotel is solid, it's stone built, it's quite kind of like, impressive, it's imposing, it's like a strong, well-built structure. This place, it's certainly not like something which has been built there recently. It's stood the test of time, that kind of thing. Okay, so it's quite an impressive, imposing kind of building. So firstly, the White Hart seems to be quite an impressive and imposing building. Comma, quote, solid stone-built hotel. Okay, so then if we color code, we've got our parts of the answer. Okay, so impressive and imposing is where we've shown understanding by interpreting the sort of, the strength of that, but we can't use the word solid because it's already in there. We can't use stone built. All right, so then let's go back to what we're doing on here. So once it had been the only place to eat in the town, but it had grown shabby. Okay, so again, pause the video and highlight the phrase which you think indicates something about the hotel. And hopefully you've put it had grown shabby. So this is a really classic example of the sort of thing that you need to do in this, because you can't use the word shabby to explain the word shabby. So you need to show an understanding of what the word shabby means in the context of a hotel. It's not like shabby clothes, for example, or shabby shoes. It's a shabby building. Okay, so think of what would appear shabby in that hotel. So it might be the decor, it might be the wallpaper, it might be the sort of general appearance of it. So you can hear these words I'm using here, they're the sort of thing that you want to be putting into your comment. So next, the hotel seems to have lost its, lost its sparkle, lost its charm, it's faded, it's no longer as fancy and as upmarket as it once was. There's all sorts of things you can do. Lost its charm and been almost like in disrepair a little bit, and almost been neglected. I think it's probably a good word. It had grown shabby. Okay, so there's another one there, look, and if we color code that. Now, as before, this is just about the time where you guys need to do the rest of it yourself. Okay, so that would get 2 out of 5 from an examiner. They would be ticking that bit there, and they would be ticking that there. You guys need to find 3 more. If you want to do 6, that's absolutely fine, again, but do stick to your strict timings, okay? This is 10 minutes at most for this question, because as you should know, 5 minutes at most for the first one, because it's just bullet points, 10 minutes for this one. It's 10 marks when you add them together. 10 marks on Eduqas for language means spend 15 minutes. Okay, so pause the video now and try and find the rest. Okay, so you should have got some answers now if you've unpaused, and those are the ones that you should have found. So the building one I did, it's got a prominent location. I didn't model that one, and it's the only place to eat in the town. So it used to have like a reputation. It used to have a former glory. I did the shabby one for you. It's full of underage drinkers on a Friday night. It could be rowdy with skirmishes which brought the police. Perhaps it's got a bad reputation. It had an atmosphere of genteel decay during the week. It's old-fashioned, with the elderly waitresses in the black and white uniforms, very, very, not very modern in their style. The food is very traditional, vegetables, thick gravy, panic about the vegetarianism because they think they haven't got anything to give her. Anything like that is all coming under the same bullet point. Or the food is just not good. Okay, this place has lost its ability to kind of like keep up with the market a little bit. Okay, so then we move that one over there and let's go on to question 3. So it says at the top of the screen, question 3, read lines 19 to 34. Okay, so let me just highlight those ones as well. So you take your pen, make sure I use the right colour, highlight that across, question 3. So you can see we've got our nice clear sections going through. It says, what sort of man is Bob Hewlett? How does the writer show what sort of man he is? Okay, well, Bob hasn't been mentioned really so far in this section. Only the request of Bob Hewlett, the fact that he called her to have lunch, but now this section is going to focus on introducing him. Now, this is a 10-mark question for question 3. These are always 10 marks, so you're trying to find 10 bits of evidence and show different forms of understanding. As with previous papers, there will be 2 or 3 marks available at the end just for any like spotting of writer use of language. So in this one, you want to be looking for the way that he presents him through kind of like the actions and also that Rachel's thoughts and actions as well. I won't give you too much hint on that because there's not a very large amount of language on this one. It's very, very, very concentrated towards what actually happens. There's only the other 1 thing or so that you can mention. So actually you could probably get about 8 out of 10 just for doing comment evidence on this one. Okay, so we need to find anything which relates to Bob. Okay, so let's go through the highlight, and if you want to work along with me. Rachel had come across Bob before and didn't like him much. Okay, so in that first sentence, highlight where you think the answer is. And you should have put didn't like him much. She thought he wanted to use her work for his own advantage, and she also felt he was too close to the local farmers, too desperate to be accepted by them, rather than do his job properly. There's a couple of different answers in there. Okay, if you want to pause the video and try and find those. And if you've unpaused, then you should have put use her work for his own advantage, and he's also too desperate to be accepted by the farmers. That's the then. Okay, so that'll do for our first model there. Question 3. Let's look at how we could write this up. So we're always going to start with firstly. So we're tracking the text always. Rachel had come across Bob before and she didn't like him much. Okay, so we need to put didn't like him much into our own words or thoughts or feelings or what's happening. So what does she perceive Bob to be like? She didn't like him. Well, she's judged him, hasn't she? She's decided that he's not someone she's going to admire, or he's not universally liked or appreciated, or didn't appreciate his behavior or something like that. So anything along those sort of lines will work. Okay, so firstly, Bob seems to have a negative reputation, or you can say, or even personality, as Rachel didn't like him much. Doesn't have to be too precise here. That is going to be enough to get you your first mark on the paper. Okay, just color code those. So the next one, she thought he wanted to use her work for his own advantage. So now you should be thinking to yourself, what do you call someone who's using something of someone else's to help themselves? Okay, so if you take advantage of someone, you might use a word like abuse their kind of like their good nature, exploit them. You might say that he's maybe a little manipulative in the way that he behaves, something like that. Okay, so next, he seems to exploit Rachel's good nature and use her work for his own advantage. I think that's enough to get the mark on that one. Notice that your comments should never really be one word. There should always be a phrase to show understanding within the context of the story. Okay. Don't need any more than that, and that will get us a score of 2 marks so far. All right, so if I just tick that one there and that one there, that's going to get us 2 marks. Okay, so now you want to be working your way through and trying to find as many of those as you can. You're looking for different categories of answer each time, okay? As you work through the lines, you will hit those different bullets on the mark scheme. So pause the video now. You have at max 15 minutes on this, although to be honest, because I've done a couple of answers for you, you probably want to reduce that down by a couple of minutes as well. So pause the video and have a go at that. Okay, if you've done that and unpaused, then here are your answers. So he is not universally liked, which is the one I did. He seems to take advantage, again an example. And then he's too close to local farmers, he's too desperate to be accepted. You might say he wants to be popular, or he wants to be liked, or something like that. He may not do his job properly because of being too close to locals. He's compromised in terms of his position. He wants to be part of the local community, so he wants to be involved. He wants to be part of something, you could say. He acts the role of the country landowner, so he plays the role with the Range Rovers and the Labradors in the back, so he wants to kind of like have that sort of status and reputation in the local area. He seems sociable, but again, that appearances can be deceptive. He has some influence and power because Rachel knows that it would be unwise to offend him. He beams at Rachel as he mentions Peter Kemp. He's irresponsible because he drinks and drives. He's high-handed and patronising, and his attentions are not welcome. He's a little bit of an overbearing character, and she doesn't trust him and doesn't like his behaviour sometimes. And that's the only mention of the how at the bottom. As I said, it's very limited on how, this question. So a mark for each of those, and then we'll move on to question 4. Okay, so question 4 says, read lines 35 to 61. So we need to scroll down. So that is this section here. So this is question, oops, don't know why it switched like that. This is question 4, but it's also going to be question 4 right down to line 61, which is here. So that's also question 4. Okay, so this one says, how does the writer present the character of Peter Kemp in these lines? So we're not looking at Bob this time, we're looking at a different character, we're looking at Peter. Okay, so anything can go with this, and obviously those instructions there, they come on every question, but it basically means find the quotes, put it in your own words, and then only for the last couple of marks you can get the how in there. For the vast majority of the time, you don't need to do it. It's going to be about getting coverage across those lines, okay? Because you can get 7 or 8 out of 10 on this question just by getting the quotes and showing understanding using those synonyms and feelings and what's happening, like I've explained before. Okay, so have a look at that one, and let's use the first one that we've got there. So she first saw Peter Kemp hovering in the doorway of the dining room. Does that tell us anything about his character? Not yet. A waitress told him he was too late for lunch, but he gave her a lovely smile and pointed to the table. Okay, so Peter Kemp has a lovely smile. As he walked towards them, he smiled charmingly. So again, similar sort of thing, but Rachel could sense his confidence. Now that's a different topic. Okay, he shook hands with them and returned to her. So these two here are the same one. Okay, because just smiling at them. This one here is a different bit of information about him, so you're going to get a different point on the mark scheme for that. You want to be looking for different categories of answer as much as possible. Okay, so let's write this up together. So question 4. Firstly, and it's about Peter, so we need to show his understanding of that. His lovely smile, he smiles charmingly. All that on the surface is, you know, is great. So firstly, Peter appears to be polite and friendly, as he has a lovely smile and smiled charmingly. You can just use one if you wanted to, but I've put them both in. I've chunked them up as separate ones. It doesn't really matter a great deal. Okay, so that's going to be our first one, and polite and friendly is our comment there. So next one, confidence. Pause the video now and see if you can do that one yourself. Okay, so you should have done something like, next, he is not shy, so I've gone for the kind of opposite here, as, quote, Rachel could sense his confidence. So it's quite a short comment this time, but it very clearly shows understanding of it. Okay, so again, examiner would mark both of those correct, just like that. All right, so same thing as before. Start your 15-minute timer, or just under 15 minutes. There are lots of possible answers here. There's well over 10 that I've got on the other screen there. and you want to find as many as you can. There are 2 points of language how bits at the bottom, so you can definitely get up to 8 out of 10 on this one with just doing the comment and evidence. So for getting a really good grade, 7 or 8 out of 10 is fantastic, and you still can get access in the very top grades on the whole specification with that. So focus on that mainly, rather than doing anything to do with language, unless you're really confident that you've got 9, 10 things across the range of the lines. So pause that one now, and then we'll mark it. Okay, so if you've unpaused that, those are your answers. So he seems attractive at first and self-confident. Those are the ones that I picked out. He's polite and he's formal with his greetings. He immediately compliments Rachel straight away. He's trying to flatter her. He knows he's hard to resist. He's manipulative, and he's got quite a lot of guile as well. She submits to his flattery and charm. So even though the question's about Peter Kemp, because she submits to the flattery, it shows the kind of power and the charm of his flattery. He gets what he wants, including Rachel's passion and desire for him. It is described as having like the intensity of an adolescent crush, so it makes her like a teenager again, even though she's older. Kind of got lost in the feelings sort of thing. He uses his charm to try and win over Rachel's mother, but it seems forced and false because he's trying to get something. He's trying too hard, basically. Rachel's mother glared because she doesn't trust him. He's showy. He's too over the top, maybe a little bit shallow and untrustworthy. He's a little bit too much, you might say. He's romantic, the flowers and the champagne, but again, that could be part of the showiness. He's irresistible, and then you've got the right to how points at the bottom. So a mark for each of these ones here, and then if you do mention anything on that one, then you can give yourself an extra credit for right to how, but it's mainly going to be focused on that one for this question. Okay, so we then need to go on to question 5, and just going to itch this out of the way a little bit so we can see it a bit more. To answer this question, we should read lines 62 to 80 and consider the passage as a whole. What that means is you need to find your answers from 62 to 80 first. So, do a small number there, like 3, 4, something like that, because it's only a small part of the text, and then you're looking for the rest of them from the whole text. And the statement that you have to judge, and you're expected to mostly agree, remember that, the writer presents Rachel as an intelligent woman, and yet she behaves very foolishly in her relationship with Peter Kemp. So your 2 most important words there you would circle are intelligent and foolishly. Okay? So, as I've said to you before in school and things like that, this means that you're expected to agree with the statements. What they are wanting you to do is to find different reasons for agreeing. So find different reasons that she is intelligent, but also find different reasons for her being foolish. Okay, so it's quite possible to be both intelligent and foolish at the same time, for different reasons and relating to different situations and different quotes here. Okay, so you might start thinking to yourself, well, she's a bit head over heels in terms of love. She loves a little bit too strongly and quickly for him, and that's correct. There is a degree of that coming into the answer, but you want to break it down into which bits are about the intelligence and which bits are about the foolishness, and then at the end, kind of like what you think about this character overall. As I said, the vast majority of answers are for agreeing with it, so that is what you want to do, okay? So intelligence. Now, if we look at the end here, okay, so 62 to 80, let's see what we've got in terms of intelligence, or perhaps even the foolishness as well. So the first betrayal came 2 months after Peter started his own consultancy firm. Rachel went to work for him and had her own desk in a small office, which was all he could afford. She acted as receptionist, secretary, and main scientist. Okay, so she's actually got quite a few roles here. Quite important. Now there are no bottles of champagne, but still she dreamed. She understood that money was tight. It was enough that he would occasionally brush his lips over her hair and say, I couldn't manage without you, don't you? So here he's a little bit creepy. He's very much, she's under his control a little bit. And so you could say that she's a little bit exploited and he uses her. So anything like that could crop up as an answer. And you could say that she's allowing herself to be used, but also clearly he's a very dodgy guy as well. Then she saw an article by him in a magazine. It described a new method for counting upland birds. It was the method she devised in the book, but he took credit for it. He claimed it as his own work. The method quickly became the recommended system for surveys of upland birds. Now, if he's claiming this as his own work, that tells us something about their relationship. Did he ever really like her, even though that she liked him? No. So the kind of thing that we could put there in our answer at the bottom is something to show an understanding of that betrayal, of that kind of, taking advantage, exploiting of her. There's lots of different ways you could describe it as. Okay. Now remember, you have to put I think, or I feel, or I agree with some of your comment evidences at the end, just to kind of show that you are, addressing the assessment objective for this question, which is the evaluation, the judgment of her as a character. So firstly, I agree that she's foolish, or perhaps naive, you could say, as she's naive with Peter and he ends up using her research and he claimed it as her own work. So I'm just going to use that second one for the first example here. Okay, so if I color code those there, he ends up using her research is the comment, because that's what he did, and I agree she's foolish because she's quite naive. That would be like a judgment there that we've got. Okay, so if you want to do some ones at the end there, that would be fine. So I would do like maybe 2, 3, 4 from the end section, and then you would start something from the rest of the text. Now, the other part of the question was about her being an intelligent woman here. Well, if you go back to the beginning of the text, then we've got plenty of examples of her having that intelligence, don't we? Because if we go back right to the beginning, let me just itch this right up here. Think about what it told us in the first few lines of the text. You want to look for some intelligence there. Well, she's done a research project at Durham, a good university. She did a degree of biology at Cambridge, a very difficult university to get into. So there's definitely some intelligence there. Okay. So if we went back to our answer at the bottom, that would be, assuming that we've done some more of those, fill in that, you could then say, also, Rachel has a lot of academic intelligence as she has studied at Durham and Cambridge. Now you can see I haven't put the I think and feel on that one because you don't need to do it every time. Just do it for some. Okay, so a lot of academic intelligence would be the comment there. All right, so you definitely want to pause the video now. Both of those are correct. Okay, I'll show you those afterwards. But that's correct and that's correct. So try and start your timer now. 15 minutes at most, just under if you want to allow time for the time that I've already done for these two here. And then pause the video and we'll go through the answers when you've unpaused. Okay, so if you've had a go at that, then these are your answers. So the intelligent ones are here. So that's the one that I did just as a model at the end. She's also got emotional intelligence, even though she's been worked on a little bit. She knows that he's kind of like flattering her and, manipulating her. And she sees that Peter can try too hard to please. So she recognizes it, but she still goes along with it anyway. Okay, so foolish, there's a few more things for this one. So the adolescent crush, that's that naivety, that childlike nature of her feelings towards him. She's delighted by his excuses. She's warned by her mother, who's older and wiser and knows what sort of guy he is. She's captivated and loves the attention and the gestures. It's, like very grand for her. She's swept away, the feelings of desire because no one has made this fuss of her before. She creates secret plans, which can include marriage and children. Definitely getting ahead of herself, in terms of this scenario. She allows herself to be used. She's blind when the bottle of champagne actually disappear. She accepts any sign of affection because she's not had that before and she's desperate for that affection, which is why he's able to manipulate her. She doesn't resign because then it would have kind of admitting to being a fool or admitting to defeat. She's too proud to do it. He never really promised anything and he's self-deceived. So then at the end, he is attractive and charming, not easy to resist, so that you can kind of feel sympathy for her here as a victim. He exploits her, which is one thing we've mentioned. He steals her ideas, her research, which we know because you can reuse things from previous questions, as you should know. He deceives her because the wedding invitation is totally out of the blue. Obviously, it's a bit of a twist at the end there, and she's hurt by that betrayal. Okay, so that is the reading section for the 2022 paper, the Peter Kemp one. Your writing section had those titles. Okay, so you will have practiced doing narratives in school, in class. If you have a story or an idea that you want to practice, I would strongly recommend that you set a timer for 45 minutes, spend the first sort of 3 or 4 minutes planning out your stages for your story, pick one of those titles, and then try and do it without looking at any notes, okay? Big thing for checking for SPAG, 16 of the 40 marks are for spelling, punctuation, and grammar, so you really need to be tight on that, especially capital letters, full stops, and commas. Make sure your sentences are clear. If you make the odd mistake on spelling, yeah, it'll get slightly marked down, but it won't ruin your exam. But if you have no full stops and capital letters, that really will ruin your mark. So make sure you save a couple of minutes at the end and go back through and check all of those. Okay? If you've done that, I'm sure your teacher back at school will be happy to look at those for you. All right. Well, that's it for the 2022 paper. Make sure you have a look at some of the other videos for more lessons on Eduqas.